Alright guys, I've been playing a lot of Hydra lately. We're going to talk about them as a faction and the list I've built to play in the Juicy League, as well as just kind of my general thoughts on the faction as well. To start off, I have the Hydra High Council as my starting 4 affiliated characters. That's Zola, Zemo, Strucker, and Red Skull 2. I think these are like, the 4 characters are like the reason to be in the faction. I think that Red Skull is an incredibly strong piece. He's expensive, 5 threat, but for 5 threat you get grunts, and grunts are always fantastic because they bring 2 kind of like bad actions. And the Hydra grunts are kind of wildly strong. They're just like way more durable than people think they are. Like, yes, 1-2-2 is significantly better than like Fury's 1-1-1 grunts, but the extra hit point, them being 3 hit points, means they're significantly more durable than the other 2 grunts we've seen so far. Also, their gun is very long range, at range 4, and still has the standard 4 dice of all the other grunts, while being the best attack type energy. They're also secure focused, which I think is also quite strong. Being able to like leave them in a corner somewhere and just be scoring points is really useful. And then Skull himself has a fairly boring play pattern, in my opinion. Like, he just uses, like, he wants to 2-tap something that's within 3 of him. And he wants to use gauntlets on both. If you don't have power for gauntlets, you cut to get power for gauntlets. That being said though, counting blanks is a hell of a drug, especially on a 6-die strike. The 2 triggers on it are super strong, and then take into account that Hydra is kind of this rerolls themed faction, he can really just kill stuff. So when I came into this, I thought that I would play Skull every single game, that he would really be like the cornerstone piece. I'd play his leadership, I would play him every game, like, this is why we're here, this is clearly the strongest piece. I don't think that's really true. I think he really struggles on a lot of different objective shapes. Specifically, I think that he's not great into Bs, because anytime he has to walk, like, struggles with that. So Bs and Ds are kind of out for him, where they have to like do kind of like the wide ranging, or like points are all far apart. He wants like a narrower scenario. But at the same time, I find like on the E, the straight up and down line, that your opponent can bring too many guns and too much to bear into him, and that he is fairly fragile, even though he's 13 hit points. He is fairly fragile, and if they have a variety of attack types, or just like a concentration of fire in general, that he can just kind of struggle on that shape. So I really only like to play him on the C shape. Plus, the C shape gives you the World Domination opening play, which I think is super strong. So anytime you're on a C-shaped scenario, so that's like, the best ones for this are the 2 objective C shapes, so Fisk and Terrigen, where if you get one of those 2 and you're Red Skull, you can double walk the grunts to one of them, double walk Skull to the other, play World Domination, score a victory point, give everybody a power. Hydra has a lot of really strong 2-cost powers. Charge on Zemo. Zola can play his tactics card on turn 1, which I really like. Spoilers, still love Howling Commandos and Bucky, and having their hops online on turn 1 gives you a lot of movement shenanigans to like really get the attrition game started and get your guns into position. It's like a way better version of Advanced R&D, and Advanced R&D is a restricted card. So I think World Domination is like a very core part of Skull's kit, and I think anytime you think that that card might be good, you probably want to be playing Skull. And then I think it also creates this really interesting play on the 3 wide ones like Sword and Intrusions, where you have priority, and then you put like somebody who's fragile or evasive or even durable just up there on the center extract or center secure, and then either they have to double walk somebody onto the secure, or they have to successfully kill that model. And if they don't, then you're doing World Domination. So I think just like there's lots of really interesting plays, and I've built my list to be kind of gun heavy, so if they put somebody up front to prevent the World Domination play, I get a lot of free shots, and then I can just play World Domination some other time. So I really like Red Skull. I don't think he's an all-the-time thing. His leadership is okay. I just think Strucker's is so much better. So if we move over, we'll talk about Baron Strucker. Baron Strucker is I think a lot of people find him very underwhelming because he's like this weird tanky character, but he's like not really that tanky because he's got fairly average stats, and he's 5 hit points on each side for 3 costs. You're like, this is fairly normal, like what makes him tanky. It's mostly just like a lot of the tech you bring and the reroll that he has. Like the reroll bubble makes him tankier, and then he's just not the biggest threat in Hydra. Like there's almost always some other piece that is more threatening than Baron, Oh, there goes my... Oh, gosh. How will they know I'm a man of culture if my monocle's not in? Baron Strucker is just like a... Oh, gosh. Strucker just like has multiple cards that can make him really difficult to get at, and then your opponent doesn't get that much for getting at him. But the thing that he brings is that he's a pretty good piece to stain on scenarios. The leadership brings tankiness to the rest of the faction, as does his strategic genius, and then the strategic genius and the incinerates that he can put out like increase your damage as well. So he's like this great kind of force amplifier where he just like makes everything around him better. He makes your opponents worse, he makes your stuff better. I like him a lot. Obviously you can bring exceptional healing, and that can make him really tanky, especially because he doesn't have a ton to spend his power on, and he makes it pretty well. And then the other card is, we'll talk about it in a second when we get to Zola, but Scientific Method is really good on Strucker. The other one you bring is Zemo. Zemo is also, I think, a sometimes food where I think you play Strucker like every single game. Zemo you play most of the time. He's really good on split scenarios, so if like you're on a B, that way you can put Strategic Genius on both sides and just kind of have your whole army have reroll 1 attack and defense all the time, and that adds up over a long period of time. I think any Wakanda player will tell you how good just like rerolling 1 attack die and 1 defense die like every time is, and that costs power, and this is just kind of free and floating out there. And even if it's central, playing Zemo can be good because you can just make the bubble really big and make it so that you're kind of just always in it, and you don't have to like focus on trying to stay close to Strucker or Zemo. But everybody knows why Zemo's great. Like his reroll on his attacks is really good. Strategic Genius is fantastic. The guy can be a little bit fragile, but like he's an all-star and has been since the core box for a reason. Last of the core 4 is Zola. Zola is, I think, the weakest of the 4. His 2 physical defense can mean that he's like really susceptible to like the rapid fires that are really popular, either through like Mystique Rapid Fire or Bucky Rapid Fire that's all over the meta right now. As well as something just like, like Moon Knight out of Web Warriors just randomly getting to like kill Zola. You have to just like treat him like he's pretty fragile, even though he kind of has a chassis that makes you think that he's a little bit tougher. But he just really isn't that tough. And then he has the Shuri rerolls, which you're like, oh yeah, the Shuri rerolls are fantastic. Shuri is an absolute all-star. Has been for a really long time. I argue she's kind of underplayed right now, but I think that might just be because I don't have a Wakandan player running around in my meta. But he's not quite as good as Shuri because, first of all, his gun is shorter range, so he's overextending himself more to get access to the power for rerolls. And then he is, while he isn't exactly softer than Shuri, I think he is kind of in a similar realm to Shuri. Shuri pushes stuff away, making her safer from whatever she attacks, which Zola just doesn't really do. Now, Zola brings a lot of really amazing things for Hydra. The reroll bubble's really good. The synergy between his, like, the downside of his rerolls and Strucker's leadership can be really good, where if you have a skull in your roll and you spend the rerolls, Zola will give you a bleed, and then you can use the Strucker leadership to hand that bleed to the opponent and then heal your character 1. Can be a really, really big deal. I just think that's fantastic. Also, just like, man, I think it's underrated how good just like random condition clearing is. And like there's so little in the game that does it. There's like a couple leaderships that do it. There's like 3 leaderships that can clear conditions, and then there's like 2 tactics cards that can clear any condition, and then another 2 that can clear specific ones. But it just doesn't really exist in the game. Like you have to stagger yourself to get rid of conditions, and I just think that the Circle Leadership's really good in that end. But anyway, it synergizes with Zola, which is fun. He also just hands out a bucket of conditions, which can be really nice. Like you can just like Yahtzee a bunch of wilds and find like Hulk or like flipped Steve Rogers or any of these like tankier models just covered in conditions, which I think is really fun. He's also one of the few, so of those core 4, only him and Skull are the ones that are able to move opponents. So like don't overlook his spender there. Like being able to use the spender to clear an objective can be really, really valuable. And then it's not stopped by Helmet, so you can do that to Juggernaut. Now, getting a 6-die energy attack to do damage to Juggernaut is not a guaranteed thing, but it is a way to move Juggernaut or the Sentinels. So rounding out my affiliated slots, I have Bob, Agent of Hydra. I think Bob is really underrated, just kind of in general. I think it's really hard to not play a 2-threat that's affiliated. I think like every faction kind of wants to have a 2-threat in their roster, and if he's affiliated, it makes all your math so much easier. It can let you be like, okay, do I bring this outside of faction 4-threat, or do I bring 2 2-threats if I want to play wide? I think it offers a lot of flexibility. I also think that a lot of people play Bob kind of wrong. I think a lot of people just like, they want to shoot the rocket as soon as they can, and then they want to try to build power back to get the rocket again. And if they can shoot 2 rockets, then Bob will pay for himself. And I really don't think that's the best way to play Bob. I think you play Bob as like, I think you just run around and you shoot your pistol until they daze him, or until you really need the rocket. And then he can fire the rocket dazed, no problem, because but how still triggers, because after the rocket's shot, he still doesn't have an activate token, so he's not gone out of the game yet. And then on top of it, like as the game goes on, your opponent's pieces will start to bunch up more as like the epicenters of the fights start to exist, meaning that the rocket can do even more damage because it does 2 splash damage. Being able to shoot Steve Rogers and then everybody that he's protecting with his bodyguard also takes 2 damage can just be a ton of value. And I've actually found myself shooting the rocket not at the thing I want to kill, but shooting it at stuff that has 2 hit points left and is being protected by bodyguard, because Hydra doesn't have a lot of ways around bodyguard other than just killing the thing that's killing the bodyguard and then killing the thing that was in bodyguard. I think Bob's criminally underplayed. Now, I also have Bullseye in this roster, and I will largely play Bullseye over Bob, but I think Bob's good. Also, I feel like people just don't know that he has Hydra tactics. Like, that's pretty good. Like, if everybody's seen how dumb Hydra tactics is on Bucky, Bob has Hydra tactics. And I think my time in S.H.I.E.L.D. has made me really an apologist for 4-die builders, and especially like 4-die gainers that just like guarantee you the power. I think the character's great. Like, just take 4-die attacks, and if you spike it, then dump a bunch of rerolls into it, and who cares? He's also a really fun character to put Scientific Method on. After the rocket's gone, then you have this really bananas attack, and then he's obnoxious to attack, and then if you kill him, he still doesn't even die. So, I don't know, I like Bob a lot. I'm playing Bucky. If anybody knows anything about me and like how I build lists and how I move around in factions, is anytime I change my faction, I will just play a bunch of the stuff I played in my last faction. So Bucky's here because I played a bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D., and also because I wanted to play hammers, and I don't know, Bucky's really good at hammers. So it seems silly to have hammers in your roster and not have Bucky. And then he's also like, can kind of be affiliated, and he's on theme. Who doesn't love being on theme? And he's just good. Alright, talking about my splashes, we talked about Bullseye. Bullseye is just the man. I love him. I love seeing somebody, one of my opponent's models on 2 health, and they activate some other thing, and I can just activate my 2 threat and just take that piece off the board. I love that. I'm kind of addicted to playing wide right now because of my shield experience. So I've gotten pretty good at playing wide, so I'm leaning playing wide here, and I'm playing double 2 threats. Plus, bleed can heal him, which is fun. I'm playing Nick Fury in the Howling Commandos because, again, I can't quit my shield ways, but also I just think they're really good here, and they synergize with a couple things that we're doing. So I really like just being able to do the Incinerate grenades to heal one. I think that just feels really good. The Incinerate being guaranteed means that the heal is guaranteed. I think that feels great. Hydra also loves to just shoot incinerated targets, and I think that's fantastic. I also just think Brothers in Arms is really good here. Hydra doesn't have a ton of traditional action compression. Like, they have action compression off of attacks, and they have, like, Zemo's charge. So, like, being able to, like, flip, or being able to, like, activate the Commandos and put Red Skull into threat of somebody is really good. I also think it's really good to, like, save people. I like it on turn 1 where you can, like, turn 1 you do the World Domination play, and then if your opponent does threaten to kill Skull, but they have to do it over several activations instead of in just a single one, there aren't a lot of models that will just, like, 1 round Skull on the midline immediately without a little bit of setup, so that can give you a chance to, like, walk the Commandos up, pull Skull farther away, and then walk them onto the point, or walk them wherever. It doesn't really matter. I think they're just, like, really interesting in the faction. I think just more people should be playing them in general. I think they're nuts in Steve Rogers. I think they're obviously really good in Dormammu, but I just think they're really interesting in anybody that, like, has a bunch of idiots that struggle with mobility and struggle to hit hard. Like, I think just their toolbox is just great. I love the Commandos. I think they're so good. Alright, and then I have my 2 kind of spicier picks. I was playing for a while Sinister, and I think Sinister is mostly just cute, but we talked about how I didn't love Red Skull on E scenarios, but you'll notice I have Researcher in the roster, so I need something that can really punish my opponent for, like, grouping up on the Researcher. So we're looking to play some beams, and Sinister's beam is nuts, and the Strucker Leadership does a lot of cool things for Sinister's beam, and then Sinister's Tactics card, Forced Extraction, does a lot of really cool stuff. I really like, like, on turn 1, Sinister Forced Extracting, grabbing a bunch of genetic samples, and the way that, like, Sinister's kit works is that genetic samples are essentially hit points. They literally function as damage reduction, but they also are, like, a better way to think about it than their pseudo hit points is when you have them, it's like it's 3 more damage you have to deal to him. With that, it can make like being able to force extract and then just being like, this guy has 9 hit points, and you just go stand him on a center point and be like, good luck, feels pretty good. It's sad that he can't also pick up an extract when he does that, because the thing does cost a power, so that's a little bit sad. But it also means that, like, the root superpower that he doesn't use super often, where he pays 1, a genetic sample, and he puts root on somebody, that now also healing him means that, like, you can just discard 1 to gain a literal health, which makes that superpower feel a lot better. He also helps Hydra by having his bow effect, little playthings. That's an effect that Hydra doesn't have a ton of, and Hydra helps him with rerolls, so that when he does have to strike for power, they help him, like, grab that power. And then, because, like, they give him rerolls, and they make their defenses lower, and all that stuff. But ultimately, I think I decided that just Crimson Dynamo was just a better option here. Crimson Dynamo is just, like, I did not realize just how kind of nuts he is into a lot of things. The frickin' disruption field is super strong. So if you just want somebody to tussle over the Researcher, or over gamma points, or anything where, like, they actually have to commit multiple pieces to a significant zone, I think that Crimson Dynamo is just so strong at this. Like, he puts shock out on everybody. Those shocks can heal him. And then also the disruption field, like, combined with the rerolls from the faction, like, we can use defensive rerolls, but mostly the strategic genius rerolls can just make stuff like really tough to deal with. And anytime you can like have somebody end up leaving Strucker on 1, and then Strucker can like like he'll heal 1 from healing factor, hopefully he'll put an incinerate on you and heal 1, and then maybe he'll do his spender that heals, and you can just like undo so much damage. And disruption field just is really powerful at doing that. So now that we look at like everything we have we're kind of very good at the C scenario. We're okay at B's because we have double strategic genius and we can form strong gun lines, and I brought strong guns to do that with. We now have our E-shape specialist, so let's get ourselves somebody that can help us at D shapes. And Nate actually talked me into trying out Sabretooth, and I've actually had a lot of luck with him, which is kind of surprising. And it's kind of wild how much the meta in general has changed its tune about Sabretooth. And I think that's for a couple different reasons. Is that, first of all, like, healing factor and exceptional healing are just like really good pieces right now, because there's lots of big boys in the meta that are doing super high value attacks and being able to like just take a 9-die punch from Hulk and just be like, that's 1 damage. Like, I know you spiked to kill me, but it's 1 damage. And then that combined with the fact that like the leadership from Strucker does a ton of stuff for Sabretooth. Sabretooth, if he hits the wild bleed on the counterattack, he can heal with it. He can hand conditions off that are given to him, just like everybody else. But like that out of activation gives him another area that he can heal, plus another healing factor, plus more average healing. And then on the D scenario, it can let you really run down those characters that are tough for you to get at. Like when Kat gets in and grabs a book, you can go have Sabretooth chase after her. So I've had a lot of luck with him. I have the fewest games of anybody on this list with Sabretooth. But I've been pleasantly surprised, and I just kind of like Sabretooth. Like, who didn't grow up with the X-Men comics and love it? And I just like the design. I think his mini's cool. I'm sad that he doesn't see play, and I'm excited that I get to put him on the table and that he's been doing well. Let me know, guys, if you've tried out Sabretooth, since everybody said he was terrible, including me. Let's go over my tag tactics real quick. I know we've talked about a bunch of them. World Domination, that's the big one. World Domination is absolutely killer. I think this is like the premier Hydra's card. You don't play it all the time, but when you can play this on turn 1, it will wildly change the strength of your faction. And I think it's just so good. The 1 victory point, or however many victory points it ends up giving you, is very whatever. The thing that's nuts about it is 1 power on everybody. Like, that's so much better than like the best advanced R&Ds. And I think it's just killer. So good. The other Hydra cards that I play, I like Scientific Method a lot, as I've talked to you. The extra defense. I also just think the attack, the SP leakage attack, is just really good. It's really good on Strucker, because like being like, hey, we both count skulls, but any skull you roll is just auto damage. Like, it just feels really good. And then putting it on Bob is hilarious, because having Bob have a really powerful 6-die attack as a 2 threat is really funny. The other ones that I didn't think were going to be good, but actually managed to be good, are Inevitable Betrayal and Occult Research. Inevitable Betrayal is corner case. It just is. But that being said, I am playing the 2 scenarios that have cost 2 secures. So like that being a 4 VP swing for 8 power, it's definitely a thing worth 8 power in a tactics card. A 4 VP difference is huge. Going from like they're scoring it to they're not scoring it is just a really big deal. And it can also be a solution to like they dazed your character last turn and now your injured character can't beat their healthy character and we don't have ways to move them off the points because we're largely just dudes with attacks. But you know, you took a bunch of damage and then you dealt a bunch of damage but came up short. It can be a really good way around that. Don't do what I did. It has a range. I thought it was just like any character spends 8 power, pick any character on the map. That's not what it does. Read your cards. It's range 2, and it has to happen in the cleanup phase, so they have a lot of counterplay to this. But I expected this card to be trash, and I think it's pretty good. Or at least corner case. The other card I was surprised how much I liked was Occult Research. This card seems like a meme. Giving Red Skull 3 actions a turn is nuts. But like 10 power on Red Skull seems very tough with how he plays. Where I think this is really good is when you do your World Domination play, right? So Skull goes to 2 power for dominating the world, right? And then like you just have to hang him out to dry and he might die, or they like put some big piece like Hulk into him and Hulk, smashes him twice and he dies. This gives him, he has 7 health. That's 2, and he has 2 from the turn before, 1 from the first power phase, 1 from World Domination, 7 from his health. That's 9, 1 from the next power phase. And then once you gain that power, you're at full 10. You can just play this, and you can stagger the thing that killed you, which hopefully in 1 action he can't kill you, and then you can hopefully kill him in your 2 actions, or get Skull to safety. I think it's corner case, it's cute, but the 3 or 4 times I've put it on the table, I've actually gotten it off. And it hasn't been like I've been cutting like crazy to make it happen. It's just like, just doing my normal attacks, and I end up dazing or being very close to getting it, and then I'm able to do it, and then it being played in the power phase means that when I don't have priority, it can still stagger a ton of characters. If you're playing cubes or you're playing Infinity Formula, I'd take a good hard look at this card. Although on Infinity Formula, I think you shouldn't play Skull, but that's neither here nor there. I would take a good hard look at this. The card that everybody loves, and my god, I wish it wasn't trash, but it's trash. I played it 10 games straight. I never came close to it, but Hydra's High Council is just brutally difficult. And it's like extra brutally difficult with like what's popular right now. So it essentially has 4 achievements. If you accomplish them, you get to bring in a 4 threat or less from your roster. You get to put it in play. It has no power. It immediately gets to activate that turn. The problem is just like for all of these to be good at the same time is just so tough. So like Zemo killing something, that's a thing that Zemo does. All right, cool. That's pretty doable. Zola standing on points. Zola does like to stand on points, but that's really scenario shape based, and people love to push him off points. But okay, that's pretty doable. Red Skull having 6 power is really not doable unless you're like goofing for it, right? That character's power economy is brutal, and he has to be not dazed when you play the card. Okay, and that's usually when he has 6 power, is he's dazed. Because Skull's play pattern is spend 2 power for gauntlets, get 1 power back. Like you're always going down on power, and then you cut if you don't have the power to spend. But you never want to cut unless you have to, and he doesn't have ways to like really explode more than like 4 power a turn. Like his spender can't be affected by empowered gauntlets, so you really don't do his spender very much. I really think that like this is one of the hardest things to be doing. And then the Strucker one is borderline impossible right now. So it's, first of all, Strucker has to be alive and within 2 of your opponent's characters that are poisoned. Hulk is really popular right now. Hulk immune to poison. Immunity to poison is one of the biggest immunities in the game. Anybody that's a robot, all the Hulks, tons of people are just immune to poison, right? And then the game has a lot of scenarios where they're not going to have 2 pieces within range of your one guy, especially because Strucker is a range 3 predominantly character. Like usually he wants to be within 3
and doing his basic strike. So he's not within 2. It's just really uncommon for him to be next to 2 opponents' characters, much less them having poison. Like, this is a thing that is like beyond the normal play pattern. And that's the problem, is that like 2 of these are kind of on the normal play pattern and 2 of them are wildly outside of how you normally play those characters. And this card can only be played when all 4 of them are on the battlefield. I think the card's just not good. I didn't come close to getting it off. I was kind of hoping it was a card that if you didn't get it off, the threat of getting it off would make your opponent play in a subpar way, and that has just not been the case for me. If you guys feel differently, let me know, but man, I would have really loved for that to be true, but that's not been the case for me. Alright, restricted cards. I'm currently playing Follow Me and Sacrifice. I would love to play Brace. Brace seems like it would be really good in this. I think Sacrifice is just slightly better with Malekith's running around, and I think into Hulk's, Brace and Sacrifice are kind of the same. They both prevent a similar amount of damage, and I'm just leaning Sacrifice. If you had Brace here, that's fine. Follow Me needs banned. Follow Me is not an okay card. It's really it's just really playable in the mid to late game, and you can just get a ton of work done with it. Either one of your characters was just dazed, or one of the characters doesn't spend power super well, just dropping it into a Follow Me on Skull, right? You can do things like stack up just 6 attacks straight, and your opponent can't do anything about it. Follow Me needs to be banned, and then once that is, I would play Brace Sacrifice, but until then, I'm playing Follow Me because I'm a tryhard. We already talked about Exceptional Healing being strong. I'm playing 2 healing factor characters, one of which is my leader. Exceptional Healing is always good. Like it for the Malekith matchup. I just like it for a lot of the big hitter things. If you're ever putting both healing factor characters on the table, you probably should have it. You will find a moment where your opponent's dice spike on one of those characters, and you'll play it to great effect. Card's great. I have been trying out Kick 'em when they're down, because so many of the Hydra cards are kind of corner case as to when you play them. Right? Occult Research, only if you have Red Skull. World Domination, largely only if you have Red Skull. Scientific Method, only if you have Zola. And then Inevitable Betrayal, only on certain missions. So all the Hydra cards that are good are for specific situations. They're not every single game the way that All Webbed Up or Wakanda Forever are. But Kick 'em when they're down is a card that I've really been impressed with. So this is we're kind of in big boy meta, where lots of people are playing either one of either Hulk or something really big. Now, obviously this card doesn't work against Malekith because no rerolls. But, they're playing something big like that. Or they're playing somebody really tanky. I don't hate putting this on Steve Rogers. And you can play this even if the character has only one condition, and then you're likely to put the condition on with the next attack. I think only 1 or 2 conditions on makes this card suddenly really relevant. And especially if let's say you open a turn and you're I'm gonna go to Strucker. And you're gonna attack somebody who's bleeding because Hydra does a ton of bleed. So you're okay, let's have Strucker play, Kick 'em when they're down, and then make an attack into this character, hoping to put the Incinerate on and pick up another reroll for the second one. I think it can just be really good and really exponential. Love it into Hulk. If they're playing, I love it into Hulk. I love it into Juggernaut. I like it into Steve Rogers. I like it into just a lot of... it's good into Black Panther as well, especially if you can play it after Black Panther is activated and he can't just run from you. I think Kick 'em's really underrated, especially with how many conditions this team can put out. I'm playing Fallback and Escort to Safety. Fallback is just a strong card. It's just good. If you're playing against Shield or somebody with a bunch of rapid fires, Fallback can really deny that stuff. It can be good backup plan for Skull to play World Domination. Get up there, play World Domination. They come up with their first attack, you fall back out of it because you have the 2 power. I like that. It's kind of rough to spend 2 tactics cards on that, but if it means keeping your biggest piece alive, I think that's good. Escort to Safety, I haven't played a ton. In theory, this is kind of for the E shapes, where, or the B shapes where you can maybe overextend a piece and then pull it back to safety. The card's just good, and because I have so many corner case cards, I think just having some generically good stuff can be really good here. Let's go crises. All right, secures. We've already talked about this a little bit. I'm playing Mayor Fisk, Terrigen Clouds, and Intrusions, but I think Sword could be really good here as well. Love C shapes. Constantly wanting to do that world domination pressure in the C shape. Sword is just a little bit too risky for my taste. It's so much about who wins the first one, and I'm pretty comfortable going down and then recovering, whereas Sword is like an all-out blitz to it. Plus I play against a lot of X-Men, and X-Men are so good at Sword, and I don't want to do that. So like, dial to your taste based on the meta, but I like Intrusions a lot. Alright, extracts, I'm not as confident here, but again, like this is colored by my distaste of single extracts. I'm playing Struggle for the Cube because of like all the different power things you can do and how we have a lot of really strong 2-cost powers in the list. So walking up, picking up a cube, it doesn't cost you anything, or it doesn't really cost you using your 2-cost superpower on the next turn, and then the damage can be mitigated by the Strucker Leadership. So I think that feels great. Hammers is in here just because, I don't know, everybody loves hammers. I'm the shield player in my meta, so the likelihood that I'm going to bump into somebody who's significantly better than me at it seems unlikely. Also, I'm bringing a bunch of the best hammers pieces, so I like that. And then I'm playing Research Station. I kind of can't stand Research Station. I'm not a big fan of this. I hate how the crisis is designed. I hate having to explain it to new players and how you can kind of like, once you win it twice in a row, or once you push it there, you only have to play for the draw. It can really force a scrum in the middle, and I think the like bruisery nature and the overlapping reroll bubbles can really put Hydra in a good spot playing this mission. So I like it for that reason. So that's kind of the list. Let's talk a little bit about the other build of this. So I think it's at the SoCal Open. Hydra won a 6 or 7 round event, and that list is wildly different from this. And I think that list is good. Obviously, like, he proved it's good. What I think doesn't matter. But I also think it's good. And a big cornerstone of that list that I'm not into, mostly just because of my personal taste, is Sleeper Agent Hulk. So there's an initiative style card for Hydra that is actually fairly good. So Sleeper Agent gives you a Mystique style ability on a character that's not Hydra. And they count as Hydra for all tactics cards for that turn. That doesn't really matter to us. There's like only like 1 or 2 Hydra like specific cards. With I think Inevitable Betrayal being the only one that's limited to Hydra is the only one that can play it. But it gives you the Mystique tool kit where that's like the shapeshifter type thing where they can't use reactive abilities and they can't play tactics cards. So why this is really dumb on Hulk is that Hulk can kill most things with just a throw and a single attack. The catch of Sleeper Agent is that the subterfuge, the Mystique side of the power, goes away if you ever make an attack and it doesn't daze or KO them all. So the idea is that Hulk is going to go around, he's going to throw a size 4 at something, and then he's going to make a 7-die attack, a 7-die attack or better into it. This means that they have no recourse. They can't bodyguard, they can't brace, they can't do any of that stuff, and you just get to like take pieces off the table with nothing that your opponent can do. And then in places where Hulk can't do that to certain models, he can after they get softened by some of the Hydra stuff. Where like if that model has 1 or 2 damage on it and incinerate, suddenly this is like really likely to kill that model. So I think this is good. You have to be careful with your target selection, and there's an incredible amount of skill that goes into playing Sleeper Agent Hulk, but your opponent can do very little to protect their stuff, and that makes it very strong. There's like so little counterplay to it other than just like being tanky and having hit points and rolling good. But overall, I think it's pretty good. Let me know if you guys have played it. I do want to get my hands on some games with it. I'm just not a huge Hulk fan. But that overall is my Hydra list. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you enjoy videos like this, you can subscribe and you'll get notified anytime I make new ones. There's also a playlist. I've brought back Marvel Crisis Protocol in 1 minute or less, and I have all the Hydra models coming out over the next couple days. So if you're watching this on release day, sorry it's not out yet, but every day after this there'll be one of those. And if you're watching this in the far-flung future, those are already out and you can watch them over here. Till next time, I'm Vincent Curkov, and remember that fun is a finite resource. I'm wearing a monocle made from a keychain and saran wrap. I really MacGyvered this shit.